Well, good morning again, everybody. Thanks for sticking around for this next session. And I want to welcome all of you here. I also want to welcome everybody who is live streaming right now, as well as this session's even being recorded. So if you're hearing this and it's now, the future, I want to welcome you too. So welcome to everyone. My name is Chris Rieger. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Modea, and we're really excited this year to be sponsoring the Interactive and Digital Strategies track here at HMPS. Modea is a digital consultancy, and we work with large healthcare providers, helping them to identify the right digital strategies and create the right digital roadmap, and design and build digital tools and platforms to build better relationships with their customers. I'm really excited about this session, because you're going to hear from two great speakers. This session is called Reinventing a Website, Focus on the Consumer. And I'm excited to be able to introduce Bhavna Patel, Director of Digital Marketing from Keck Medicine of USC. And Bhavna's going to be joining us virtually here today. And also my colleague, Bryce Cannon, President of Modea. So please join me in welcoming Bhavna and Bryce to the stage.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, everybody. Hi. I see Bhavna is up there now too. Great. In full spirit of transparency, we've never done a co-presentation like this before, where I'm live in person and she's virtual. So bear with us a little bit as we work through some of the handoffs here. But really, really excited to be here at HMPS 21. We've been doing a lot of work on the website for several years, and we're just really excited to meet with you all today and tell that story a little bit. So to just jump into what we want to present today and what we're going to cover, we really just want to tell a bit of a story of the journey we've been through that goes back a little over 3 years now, and we'll talk a little bit about that history of how we got to this point. Specifically, we want to make sure there are a few things that you all get to take away from this conversation. One being how critical it is for this work that we're doing, even though we are focused on the website, the web platform, how critical that is to broader digital transformation efforts at a health system. And then secondly, just, for all of you that are in the midst of a website redesign or some sort of major website-related project, some things that we learned through the process to really make sure that we were focused on the needs of the customer. And, in this very sort of search-driven consumer environment that we're in these days, some of the tactics that we applied to really focus on that aspect of what consumers are needing and demanding these days. So with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Bhavna to talk a little bit about Keck Medicine of USC for those of you that are not super familiar with the organization. So, Bhavna?
Hello, everyone. Yes, please bear with us as we navigate through this virtual presentation. I'm very excited to share our endeavor with Modea with you, but a little bit about Keck Medicine of USC. We are ranked nationally on U.S. News and World Report in 12 specialties. We are the number 5 hospital in California and the academic medical center affiliated with the Keck School of Medicine. So our health system, it includes 36 plus ambulatory locations and community hospitals, with a lot of the academic medical center relationship with the Keck School of Medicine. So, it's been an exciting time. I actually joined Keck Medicine back in February of last year, right ahead of our pandemic. And so it's been a truly, exciting time, but it's always, in the background, the web project has been something that's been underway prior to my joining with the Modea team. So I'm excited to share the project as we're at currently. So as I kind of mentioned, I joined and really spent the first few months understanding a lot of what's going on from a market dynamic perspective. During the pandemic time, we as an organization, as many organizations, had to adapt very, very seamlessly and quickly to some of the digital initiatives that may not have been at the forefront. So a lot of changes underway, lots of digital initiatives across the organization, not just from a web and a digital marketing perspective, but organizationally through everything from operations through IT to telehealth. So we were really, really in the heart of it all. And we realized that at the very forefront of some of this is our need to accelerate the website initiative. And so having to adapt during the pandemic, but also bring the organization along on this digital transformation and work very closely to kind of break down silos, but also be very nimble at the same time. So we may not have had all the informational and infrastructural, initiatives mapped out, but it truly was at the forefront of what we needed to do. And it helped accelerate a lot of these initiatives that I'll share with you today.
Awesome. So I guess I'm curious, was anyone here in the room at HMPS 2019 in Chicago? Anyone? Awesome. Well, we were there too, and I mentioned this has been a multi-year journey here with Keck to get to this point, and we actually presented together at that the last time this event was held in person to just talk about some of the research and things that we were doing to really try to gather a lot of data, understand what customers needed to inform the work that we're going to actually share today. So what that yielded was just a whole ton of information. And when we compiled that, we learned a lot of great things about what customers in the LA market specifically were looking for and really needing in an experience like this and what they wanted from Keck. And we also just got a lot of great sort of consumer insight and understanding of what the representation of the brand was in the market and even nationally. And one of the really sort of compelling takeaways that we had from all of that work was just that patients generally, when we talked to them and we did some focus groups and we spoke directly to some Keck patients and customers, they really had a pretty high affinity for the brand and for what the type of care that they got at the health system. But, and this is a big but, it can be quite challenging to navigate both physically and digitally the experience. And they had a hard time, sort of getting in that front door. So that was really part of the big challenge here for us, and what that led to is some pretty specific goal setting at an organizational level for Keck to focus on that experience, access, and just how they get people into the health system, because they knew from a care delivery point of view things are going pretty well. It's just how do we get them in, how do we nurture those relationships and deepen them. So I'm going to hand it back to Bob to talk about organizationally, digital transformation and how Keck Medicine of USC has been really focusing on pretty holistically transforming their business to focus on this need.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. So here, in lies our kind of organizational goal. We are known from a tertiary and quaternary care perspective, and a lot of our brand is really closely coupled with the School of Medicine. So what we want to try to do through this initiative is drive new patients into the health system while expanding relationships with existing patients. And this is key. I think in the previous quote that, once patients find us, they love us. We have a fierce and loyal community in the Southern California footprint. But really, in terms of the brand, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion with the organization, with the School of Medicine, with the university, to really, really make sure we hone in on our core audience and making sure that the website delivers on those key KPIs. So driving our patient acquisition and retention is our top goal. Promoting our physician expertise. There's a plethora of opportunity to really, really be advocates on our physicians' behalf and truly alleviate the confusion and through a streamlined digital experience. When somebody comes and if you were to ask someone what they know of Keck, it's usually related to the school and through some of our service lines. So how do we make sure we present ourselves in the most meaningful fashion and guide the patients to the places where they need to go to make the choices that they need, what service lines are they looking for, what experts are they looking for. And it's the purpose of our website is to evolve from one of just content and education to more of a conversion and intent focus. So kind of walking through what this means at Keck, I think there's a digital transformation means so many different things, and it is at the root of everything. When, we have tons of committees underway, but you go to the next slide, I'll kind of walk through what we are trying to synthesize down. Through the COVID period, there was tons of digital, activations underway. We had, we piloted a chatbot, email and CRM, which may not have been at the forefront of what we were asked to do to support some of our service lines. It was actually one of the key avenues of communication, continuing to support our patients through the Access Center. Telehealth took the front stage in many ways within a period of like four weeks. Undergoing patient portal improvements and continuing to enhance all the capabilities of that's underway and access to what patients are looking for in their portal accounts, our website, our mobile apps. I mean, when you think of all the different ways access is provided by a health system, all of these were undergoing tremendous improvements or overhauls in the last 18 months, all simultaneously, which is exciting. But in terms of making sure that we are all working closely together and delivering on the most effective experience, we wanted to make sure that our goals as an organization truly do deliver on the next 3 to 4 key objectives. So data. And I think I've heard that from all the presentations that I've been able to participate on. We know how important that is. And, between in kind of presenting with or meeting with the clinical, audience, they definitely are intrigued. They understand it. We presented first and foremost all the data, whether it was the research the consumer research that we conducted almost 3 years ago. A lot of that was kind of validated through a follow-up study. And we really do know that where our consumers are coming from, what they're looking for, and how do we make sure that we improve on that as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. The next key goal is that really understanding and defining our core audience. I think the current version of the site tries to do a little bit for everyone, which is probably not going to help us be successful in making sure from a patient perspective, and how do we make sure we give them the tailored experience, the key pathways that they're looking for conversion, but also not overwhelm them. And sometimes that is kind of finding the right balance of content and also information that will help them make that decision as quickly as possible. Seamless access to supporting all of those digital pathways. As I shared in the slide above, there's a lot of ways people can interact with a health system. Truly making sure that those are all connected, whether it's our CRM to the Access Center, it's our website passing leads through. I mean, making sure that we're talking to one another and passing this information, and making sure the patient, they don't know any different. They don't know what applications are powering any of this. To them is their interaction with the health system. So making sure it's a continuum, and that there are as minimum friction points as possible every step of the way. And we need to evolve. We need to continue to grow our platforms. We need to adapt to these changing behaviors and set ourselves up for the future. So again, all of this just was much more amplified and really, really did dial up the importance of some of these projects. And it's something that's a key area of focus, and that's something that I've heard all of our health system partners express. So continuing to not just build for the now, but build for the future. So what's the next horizon in terms of healthcare digital?
Yeah, and Bhavna, one thing I'd like to add there too, especially as it relates to the integration of new platforms and that building for the future. I think there's a lot of organizations out there that are talking a big game about digital transformation and adopting all these new tools and being very consumer centric. And they go through some of that and actually, bring in some of these technologies and sort of drop them in. But what they don't think about enough ahead of time is the operational element of all of this and bringing all those teams together to make sure that you don't just have the tool, but it's actually usable, that there aren't dead ends in the process because operationally you're not ready as an organization. I think one of the things that Keck Medicine of USC has done well was sort of rallying everybody together, all of the sort of cross-organizational leaders to say, okay, we're going to go after this and we're going to do it in concert with each other, so we make sure that we don't leave those dead ends out there for patients.
Yeah, I think it's definitely fostered so much more collaboration and dialogue across organization, departments, marketing, IT, operations, and really truly has been a shared objective across each of these organizations, and with this leadership support from the leadership at the very top. So now bringing all of that back to what we were focusing on in terms of the website, understanding the role the website has and making sure everyone is aligned and understands why from the data. This is very critical to all of the downstream systems and connections that we have with our patient, is really making sure from an outward facing experience that we do focus on patient acquisition and making sure that we're there every step of the way, from awareness, education, acquisition to retention, because the website is the conduit for a lot of these things, right? Whether it's supporting and through blog content or education and informing them around some of the conditions and treatments that we have care for, or promoting and driving awareness of our physicians and our capabilities. There's so many different aspects that we wanted to focus on for the website, and in partnership with you guys, really understanding how we need to make sure our content strategy is really going to set us up for success across this continuum of acquisition considerations. And so that is something that, through very, very detailed and thorough analysis, we talked through our strategy team, making sure we can support service line campaigns and awareness objectives through education, finding the right balance of what is education for a patient versus education for an academic audience, and being able to differentiate and separate the two, because oftentimes that's the same content that we were using. From an acquisition perspective, making sure it's much more conversion focused, but knowing how people really do want to have that immediacy factor, whether it is a one touch to call us, whether it's being able to access their portal, making sure all of those connections are available and accessible within 1 or 2 clicks. And then from a retention perspective, continuing to build out through some of our other digital channels and making sure our leads go into our CRM, but also that we are giving that sticky content and that information that will help them become our advocates, but also give them a reason to come back and to help continue their care journey with us. So I think the biggest driver for us in the midst of the pandemic and post the research that you guys had helped us conduct is that we're still running a few steps behind, but we need to meet our patients where they are on that digital shelf. And so making sure we understand, and this is where we got where the focus needs to be in terms of where people are coming in from. We see about, and these statistics are pretty fairly known, but from an organizational perspective, meeting our patients through that pathway is critical. So making sure search, SEO has been a huge area of focus, making sure we retain that presence from a search perspective. educating our organization on the value of not just presenting ourselves on our website, but also where people are going as part of that research and consideration. And then finally, it's not mobile only, and we did see that quite a bit during the pandemic. It's mobile is definitely key part of that patient journey, but we are trying to balance what they're doing mobily from a search in an intent perspective to where they're converting. And so continuing to monitor these trends and making sure our new website and our new connections and access points can deliver and meet the patient where they are.
Great. Well, thanks for going through that, Bob. So with that stage set, now I think you all have just a little bit better understanding of the ecosystem at Keck and just where sort of the website work specifically plugs into that. I'm going to go through now a little bit more of just a bit of a case study on the website work specifically that was based on the research that we did and a lot of the things that Bhavna was just speaking to. So to get right into it, and if you go to the site today, the new site is not live yet. It'll be going live in the next couple of weeks. But the current site, the big problem really, and I don't think this is super unique to Keck specifically, but it was really a site that had been built historically more based on organizational needs and demands in some cases, rather than being really consumer-centric. So a lot of the things that Bhavna was talking about in terms of the focus on digital transformation and putting these tools in front of users, making sure we're considerate of the organic search experience and what that is yielding for customers, it really meant we needed to flip this thing on its head. We needed to completely rethink the architecture of the site, the content, and every aspect of it to make sure that it is customer-focused, patient-focused in many ways, so that we're delivering on the needs and the things that they're looking for when they come in. And that was really apparent in the data, in the research, and Bhavna just spoke a little bit about how the importance of mobile and the organic traffic coming from search into the site. And what the site doesn't do today is just deliver on that promise of the things that folks are looking for when they're coming from organic search. And largely, they're looking for things like doctors. They're looking to research a little bit more about a condition that they may have, a diagnosis that they may have, treatments that Keck Medicine of USC offers specifically, and of course locations, and particularly with mobile and folks on the go, locations. And I'll say specifically in the sort of greater LA market, this is a big time need. There's a lot of even those who don't live in LA probably have heard about just the challenges of navigating that city and that region. And so locations and wayfinding is really critical here for Keck. So as we thought about the approach to developing this product and working with Bhavna and her team to just make sure that we had a foundation of things that we wanted to make sure came through at the end of the process, they really boiled down to these four things. First, needed just a much more clear value proposition for the customer, for patients specifically. When they come to the site, yes, they're coming looking for specific things, but we want to ensure that really consistently across the experience, we're talking about answering why Keck? What's in it for you as a customer? Why should you come here when you have so many great options in the greater LA region, in Southern California in general, but why should you come here for your care? What's unique about us? What can we do for you as a patient? So that was critically important. Frictionless navigation, this has become pretty buzzwordy. I think it's pretty common across everyone doing this type of work that they want to meet this goal. For us, it was, again, kind of focusing on that search experience first and foremost, to make sure that folks who are coming in from organic search or coming in through the SEO efforts or SEM efforts that Bhavna and her team are working on, that they really get what they need and they can get there very quickly and efficiently. Even if the first place they land isn't necessarily right, can they get to the right content or to the right next step in their process really easily? One of the challenges for Keck, and this is not unique, I think, for academic medical centers in general, is just, the brand hierarchy is a little bit messy. Bhavna earlier in the conversation mentioned just a lot of people, when they think of the health system, they think of the university. They think of University of Southern California. And there are branding issues there just in terms of what a patient or a customer is really experiencing when they land on the site that needed to be addressed. And then lastly, mobile is just super critical and important here. We didn't necessarily take a mobile-first approach exactly, but it was sort of mobile was certainly at minimum equal in the design process with everything we're doing on the desktop side, just to make sure that was just a really compelling and functional experience for customers coming through those use cases on a mobile device. So talking a little bit about the information architecture, and we're giving away a little bit of the new design here in the second header, but the top one is the current experience. This is the header on the site today, and you can see some of the navigator. Hopefully, you can see some of the navigation there. But when I talked about how it was a site really more structured around the needs and the structure of the organization, that kind of comes through right away in the global navigation on the site today. There's information on there that's clearly not for patients right at the top, and they're struggling a little bit to manage the content and the sort of breadth of a site that is trying to speak to the research audience, and speak to medical professionals, academics potentially, students even, and then of course patients being the primary focus, as Bhavna mentioned. Really wanted to lock in on that, and you can see a little bit of a teaser there of the drop down that comes down from patients. Basically everything that's for a patient is buried in that drop down and not particularly easy to navigate. So one of our big focuses was, let's completely reorient that, make sure everything globally across the site is focused on that consumer audience specifically, and you can see that hopefully in the bottom screenshot, where our top navigational elements are conditions and treatments, locations, providers. If you are already a patient, here's some things for you specifically. So aligning back to a couple slides ago where we talked about what are the things people are really looking for when they land on the site, and let's make sure we give that to them really easily. The other big thing we worked on and was just a lot of this related to the content and really rethinking the content across the experience to be more focused on consumers. But that with an academic medical center, the message can be a little messy sometimes, and there's a lot of things you need to bring together to tell that value proposition story to patients and customers and make that clear to them. So we worked together to develop a narrative framework here that really helped act as the foundation for content development, as well as just the structure and architecture of the experience in general, to make sure that we are very consistently across the breadth of this website telling the same story and telling it in a way that's going to come through and be sort of relatable for patients and customers. And you can see here, it starts with a bit of a headline and just a statement of who we want, the emotions we want the customers to feel when they experience the site, and then breaking that down into the sort of three critical elements of Keck Medicine of USC, the academic medicine enterprise, and ensure that we're making the research and the academic side relatable to patients and customers through the content and that storytelling. We're supporting that with data. We're supporting that with telling the stories of actual patients and providers, and just having all the critical research-related information that we know is really important, particularly with Keck Medicine of USC customers, because as Bhavna mentioned earlier, they have a heavy focus on tertiary and quaternary care. So there's some very serious, acute things that are happening from a care delivery point of view, and there's a lot of research that happens when customers are coming and looking and just trying to understand what that care is going to look like for them, what the journey is going to be. So it's really important that we have the right information at the right readability levels for patients sort of across the spectrum. And then, specifically when we talked about content and how we wanted to present that, you can see, and it's labeled as old, but it's still current. So if you go to the site and you look at the urology section of the site, you'll see what's sort of presented here on the left. But really want to take a pretty drastic shift to laying out and presenting content that was going to be much more aligned with the research we did, what we heard patients are really looking for when they're going through their research process, when they're trying to understand, yes, I need care for bladder cancer perhaps, but I really need to understand how Keck thinks about bladder cancer and how they're going to treat me as a patient and what sort of experience I'm going to get. So we wanted to make sure that the content was really carrying that message through. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's sort of some more information on the left that's not the primary content, but other things we heard is, access to understanding what clinical trials you offer and understanding of just sort of other key data that might be a part of your journey that really pairs well with great videos and the written content that's going to help sort of tell that story and align with the narrative. So in terms of where we netted out with the work, we're going to go through now just sort of a few screenshots. The site's, as I mentioned, not live yet. It's going to be going live here in the next few weeks, but want to just give you a little bit of a preview to what's going to be coming out and talk through some of the key sort of most critical aspects of the site and why we made some of the choices that we did specifically. So, from a homepage point of view, and we'll start here, even though I think, the homepage can be a controversial section of the site in terms of importance and just, what you focus on here. But, a couple of key things that we really were thinking about in terms of reinventing the homepage. I already covered the global navigation and some of the big changes that were made there, and that is very important. The rest of the home experience, the main things were just really wanting to elevate some of those key sort of transactional elements that are a little bit more buried on the current experience, just a little bit harder to navigate. So really bringing that up to the top and pairing that with a clear brand message that's going to come through and resonate with patients coming here. And we know many customers don't land here initially when they come through search or that first step of their process. They might land somewhere much deeper into the site, like a provider profile page or a location page. But if that's not the content that they were looking for right away, many times they will end up on the homepage. They'll hit that. They'll hit the brand mark and they'll land here, right back at the homepage, and we want them to, from here, be able to easily get to the content or the information that they really are looking for. And Bhavna, I think you're back with us, so if you have anything to add, feel free to chime in here.
Yeah, and I think it's also, getting people comfortable with, flexibility to help us optimize and test and improve upon, and using the homepage a little bit more strategically as an avenue to tell our story, but also be directive from a patient perspective and put that consumer lens on when we are debating, what should the hero be, right? And making sure it's the right balance of what we want to tell our visitors and what they are looking to do when they come to our homepage.
So I spoke a little bit about the importance of location pages earlier, and specifically in the LA region, LA market, how important clarity of information and some really specific pieces of content are. And you can see that represented here a little bit just in how prominent the parking information is called out right at the top of this location. One of the things we heard over and over again in the focus groups was just like, I really just need to know if there's parking there, and as long as we got that, we're good. So that wanted to make sure that was there. But really, in general, similar to the homepage, it's making sure that we're able to start telling the story of the quality of care and the great things that you're going to get at these locations, and getting a bit of a feel for what the experience is going to be like when you get there, but also elevating those transactional elements. So we know if they quickly want to get to directions or making an appointment, calling the number to speak to someone, that those things were really obvious and transparent right there in the experience.
Yeah, and especially, the near me search volume increase as reported by Google has been key, but also during the pandemic, people did not feel comfortable coming to a hospital footprint, making sure that they weren't delaying their care, and making sure that access to all of our locations is clearly available and easy to, navigate to. So that's going to be a key improvement from our perspective.
Yep. And you can hopefully see it here too. We were calling out the mobile experience here a little bit in these visuals, but Mobile, we did both in the homepage experience and here, it is a slightly different experience when you're a mobile user focused on those use cases that are more common and focused, I think, for the mobile user specifically. Like, for example, you can see the map already sort of appearing in that type of view on the mobile device. So we quickly help folks wayfind and just understand if you're on the go, how to navigate the health system. So, and I definitely, Bob, and I want you to speak a little bit here too, but at a high level, we did a pretty hard rethink on how to present the service lines, so sort of the key specialties and departments at Keck Medicine of USC. And this was probably the biggest, I'm trying to think of the right term, Bobna, sort of hornet's nest to untangle when we thought about the information architecture and just trying to get to that very consumer-focused experience. If you go to the site today, again, you'll see every single service line or specialty at Keck Medicine of USC has their own subdomain, essentially their own website on the site for all intents and purposes. And that's problematic for a number of reasons. The content is not very consistent, the storytelling is not consistent across all of those, and it's just really not serving the brand super well. So one of our big challenges here was, let's bring that all back into sort of one consistent experience, make sure that we're sticking to templates that are going to serve the customers much better and with a lot more consistency. And a lot of times these services are somewhat interrelated too when you think about the care journey for patients. So we saw in the data that folks were not just landing on one of those services and that's it. They're going to go looking for other content and other related service lines, and there were those connection points. And we want to make sure that was not confusing and disorienting for customers as they're going through that, thinking, okay, am I still even in the right, am I still in the same place here? Because sometimes it didn't look like it. So that was a big focus here. Let's create a lot more consistency, tell that message again that's aligned with that brand level message for every one of the specific service lines at Keck Medicine of USC. What would you add there, Bobna?
Yeah, and I would just add that this was all informed with kind of that data that we were able to compile. Because we do the tough stuff, the tertiary and quaternary care. Our patient journey is multifaceted. People are coming in through a lot of different avenues, and making sure we can effectively articulate a multidisciplinary care without getting them lost across these subdomains was a real key challenge and helped inform the information architecture that we've netted out to. So, it was something we had to sell into the organization and make sure they felt comfortable with this. But when you think about the condition and treatment that they may have gotten diagnosed with, they're coming in, they're learning more, they're researching, they're looking at the offerings that we have under all of our service lines. They're coming in and researching the physicians and where they can get this care, and truly making sure, as we do, bringing that together and having it be driven through intent is really where we can meet the patient more effectively. Expecting them to know that they have to go down a different pathway or go to a different site, or by accident getting into the education site versus the patient site. Those were all some of those challenges that we were trying to overcome. But through this improved IA, we're not jeopardizing our service line objectives or trying to make sure we put those even more at a forefront, because it's going to guide people into our patient experience in a more streamlined fashion, so they're not bouncing around at all.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking about, Bobna, as you're saying that is, so this is a little bit more of sort of a pulling the curtain back behind the scenes, but there's a big operational element to this too, right? In terms of the content work to support the site, not just to get us to a go live here and having content out of the gate, but continuous content and management of this experience. That distributed model, another challenge with that was just there's also a bit of a distributed content development operation at Keck Medicine of USC. So bringing this all under more consistent template and structure and focusing on that narrative framework has also been helpful, I think, for the organization operationally to have more efficiency in just the way that we maintain and operate the site.
Yeah, and having more alignment around that content strategy, it definitely helps from, some of the resource constraints we have. So, getting everyone on the same page, understanding there's these structured templates and or approaches that we want, when they come in from a research perspective or from a I'm ready to convert perspective, and making sure we get smarter about how to use our content more effectively every step of the journey, and also making sure it delivers on a service line page versus a condition page versus a blog article, and making sure we have enough variation and distinctiveness to leverage all the work that's being done across the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in the last sort of critical page we're going to talk about here with the new experience is provider profiles specifically. And we know how critical these pages are from a conversion point of view, because just the massive amount of traffic that comes directly to these pages from search specifically. So, the big focus here, of course, was serving those customers that are coming to these pages ready to take the next step. Book an appointment with this specific provider, or just give more information, call phone number perhaps. So that was sort of table stakes here. But also, one of the things we learned in the research about provider profiles is that this is the place that the patients are really beginning, or potential patients are beginning their process of trying to create some kind of emotional connection with the organization and maybe with this provider specifically, and understand, okay, not just the basic facts about where this person went to medical school and what their star ratings are and those sort of things, but who are they as a human being a little bit. So there's that type of content and information that we wanted to make sure we were presenting here as well, through video content and through other compelling sort of the copy on the page, to make sure that they can understand who this provider is, and that they're not just they're someone that they're going to get the type of care that they're looking for, the type of sort of person-to-person experience that they're desiring here. One other, again, sort of pulling the curtain back thing I'll add here too is that from a data management, sort of provider data management point of view, these pages are coming together, being compiled from data coming through from a system that's not part of the content management system directly. So that was another challenge here, was just making sure that we're able to refactor the structure and design of these pages and align that from operationally sort of an API-driven solution here to present this content. So definitely, if you're taking that approach, or you're thinking about moving in that direction where all of this content and structure is not coming from your content management system, that you think about that early in the process, engage those folks, and work on sort of the back-end solution for this as early as you can in the process, to make sure that you're ready to go once you get close to the finish line. All right. Anything to add here, Bhavna, or move on?
No, I think you covered it. I mean, I think the other big thing that we worked on selling into the organization is that this is truly something that is patient focused. Again, knowing your audience and not overwhelming them, but not necessarily a direct lift from a CV, but really how do we tailor our physicians and represent them with their philosophy of care, which is also included on this page, but also having that emotive, humanizing element to come through, because this is truly a key part of that consideration for who they move forward with. So I think we've really engaged with our physicians. We've rewritten quite a few bios to make sure that they truly represent them in that light. But again, even the content support for our physicians has gone through an extensive revamp to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, and it's probably also important to note that these pages, maybe more than any other on the site, really compete directly with, especially if it's a faculty provider, are competing with faculty bios and things like that, the information that might be on the School of Medicine site. So from a search and sort of SEO point of view, it was just really important that we dialed in the content and the structure of these pages to make sure that they could be very findable and show up when patients are looking for this information and trying to find a provider. So with that, I think we're just going to talk a little bit about next steps, and we'll open it up for some questions too. So if you have questions, I guess we're gonna have folks come up to the microphones to ask your questions. So I guess start getting your legs warmed up.
Yeah, so we're at the very final few weeks. So we are in the midst of QA and content reviews and really making sure all of this is coming together. In the spirit of continuous improvement, we will continue to monitor all the KPIs, which we've really grilled into the organization, whether it's search rankings, it's click-through rates, it's bounce rates, conversion rates, all of those key measurements that we're going to use to gauge the before and after results. But again, this is only the beginning. This is not what the site's done, and we're gonna also adopt a rigorous testing and improvement strategies, so a lot more landing page optimizations, making sure now that we'll have a more robust infrastructure, that these capabilities come to a forefront. And the other big thing that I've been hearing through the last couple of days here at the conference is personalization, right? And making sure we're never going to get to the Amazon level of personalization, but how do we really adopt the tailored experiences from a healthcare, from what a patient would expect from a health system, and start implementing some of those personalization capabilities through the use of data and testing.
Awesome. So I think with that, happy to open it up for questions. Anyone wants to come up and learn a little bit more about the work?
Hi, Bryce.
Hey.
Thanks, Bhavna. You guys did a really good job passing it back and forth. It looks like you rehearsed it thoroughly, so.
Thanks. Appreciate that. We did a very little bit of prep, so paid off clearly.
It was very good, so thank you for that. I have a question regarding Google's page experience requirements released earlier this year. You said that this project spanned about 2 years, and Bhavna, I think it predated your starting at Keck Medicine of USC. Did those new requirements that emerged earlier this year present any challenges for you guys? Because I'm sure you probably were well underway with the project at that point.
Do you want to take the first stab at that, Bhavna, or do you want me to jump in?
I'll let you start with that one.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously we're the partner organization working with Bhavna and her team here, and I think so. Therefore, the impetus of just SEO being really tight with the experience was first and foremost on us to make sure we're delivering on that. And as an organization, we have really tried to stay on top of those trends as they're coming out and just be the first people to hear it as best we can, and adapt on the fly in some cases to make sure we're complying with that. And I think you're probably talking about some of the accessibility rules and some of the other things that came through. And thankfully, when that happened, we were still early enough in the process that we were still thinking through some of the design work, some of the content strategy. So we did have to adapt a little bit and tighten up some of the accessibility best practices and some of the things that we needed to do from a mobile point of view as well, just to make sure that we were hitting the mark there. And we'll certainly find out when we go live with the site, if we're lining up as well as we perceived. But we feel like we've checked all those boxes effectively and done the due diligence certainly. But it's a challenge, right? These things are always evolving, so we're trying to stay ahead of it as much as possible. Bhavna and her team were also really dialed into SEO, obviously, so it was a collaborative effort to make sure that we're doing everything we can to rank as high as possible in Google's algorithms.
Nice.
Yeah, and we definitely were making some short-term changes to make sure it wasn't going to be a complete negative impact even on the current site. But no, we were very, it was the right time. As Bryce mentioned, we were in the right, from a design perspective, content work, and really making sure from a responsiveness that we were adapting all of those requirements into our page templates to keep up with the constant changes of the algorithms.
Yeah, I think one of the bigger impacts it had just from a delivery point of view is there was a little bit of delay in timeline just to make sure we were tightening everything up.
Right.
But thankfully, we were able to parallel path some of the sort of back-end development as that design was still being created, so that we could have a little bit more of an agile approach to delivery here of this initial site.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, I actually have one more.
No one else is up at the mic yet, so yeah, go for it.
I'm wondering, and sorry if you already touched on it in your presentation, but when it comes to physician relations and like a physician portal, for instance, I know a lot of accountable care organizations, they'll offer their members, their physicians, ongoing training and certifications and other things that are accessible through a portal, which can be personalized. And I'm wondering if there's any aspect to the project that you guys carried out with Keck Medicine of USC that involves development of a physician portal or any sort of physician resources separate from the consumer-facing website.
I'll let Bhavna take that one first. No, I can chime in, but yeah.
No, it's actually, that is phase 2. Like
Okay.
right through,
Good to know.
soon thereafter, what we were trying to just focus and launch as quickly and as effectively as possible is that patient experience. But our physician, which is a good, it's our key second, primary audience is our physician audience. There's work stream underway in the organization to build out a physician portal. But from a front end perspective, we do want to build a more robust physician experience other than just a form that we may have right now. And that is truly the next step of this project.
Thank you. I could probably ask you like 10 more questions, but I'll stop. Thanks for your presentation.
Appreciate it. All right. Anybody else want to jump in?
I think we're right up against lunch.
Yeah, we absolutely are. Well, I think the slides are available in the app. There's our contact information is on the last slide. So if any of you have follow-up questions or just want to get in touch directly, there's way more that we could have covered if we had more than an hour here. So happy to talk more about the work and some of the sort of the more specific details behind some of what you saw today. But thank you all for your time today. Really appreciate you guys coming to join us here. It's great to be in person again and see people live. So thank you so much.
Thank you.